Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. We are studying the book of Isaiah, and today we begin the second chapter of Isaiah, Yeshayahu. This chapter is one of the most famous of Yeshayahu's prophecies, and many of you will probably be familiar with many of the verses. Although most commentaries treat this as a separate prophecy from the first chapter, it is quite clear to me that it is really a continuation of the prior chapter, and it will be much better understood in that context. The reason I say this will become obvious as we let the prophet speak for himself. Imagine, therefore, that you are still within the walls of Jerusalem in the conditions that we described in the previous chapter. The armies of Assyria have destroyed the countryside around you, and the wounded and the refugees from all the cities of Judah and Israel are now running and staying behind the walls of Jerusalem for safety. You're surrounded by the injured and the refugees, and you have just heard Isaiah's stinging rebuke that we just studied last chapter, where he told them that your rituals and prayers for safety and for salvation are meaningless unless you become better people. You are different from the nations of the world, Isaiah told them, because your God asks you to be kind, to be just, to be good to your fellow man. Remember your unique role and mission in this world. In Isaiah's words from the last chapter, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh, Zion will be redeemed with justice, v'shaveh b'tzedakah, and those that return to Zion will be with righteousness. So Isaiah now continues to speak to the Jewish people as follows: Hadavar asher chazai Yeshayahu ben Amoz al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. This is the word that Yeshayahu saw in a vision regarding Judah and Jerusalem. This is fascinating because it says that he saw this vision regarding Judah and Jerusalem. However, he immediately turns his attention not to Judah and Jerusalem, not to the people inside the walls, but he turns his attention to the armies that are surrounding the city. And he says as follows: V'haya bi'acharit hayamim, nachon yiyeh har beit Adonai, b'rosh harim, v'nisa migvaot, v'naharu elav kol hagoyim. Remember, the remnants of the people are huddled behind the walls, as Isaiah stated in last chapter, like a sukkah bakerem, like a hut in a desolate field. But one day, says Isaiah now in chapter 2, in the end of times, Jerusalem will not be a hut in a desolate field, but nachon yiyeh, it will be a proud city. And all nations will turn to Jerusalem, to the mountain of God, and the nations will flow to Jerusalem, not to destroy it like those armies that are standing outside, but rather, as he says in the next verse, V'halchu amim rabim v'amru l'chu v'na'aleh el har Adonai el beis Elohei Yaakov v'yoreinu midrachav v'nelcha b'yorchotav ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai miYerushalayim. All of the nations of the world are going to say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of God, to the house of the God of Jacob. Let him teach us his ways. Let us go in his paths. For the teachings of God come from Zion, and the word of God from Jerusalem." Instead of coming to destroy Jerusalem, Isaiah turns to the world and says, all of the nations are one day going to come because you're going to recognize the special teachings that come from this place, from the people that live in this place, that keep the Torah that their God has taught them. The nations will come to learn how to live in peace and justice. This verse, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai miYerushalayim, was specifically directed at the nations of the world that come to the Jewish people and learn about justice and righteousness, learn about tzedek umishpat. And he continues, V'shofat ben hagoyim. What is it that they will learn? Again, tzedek umishpat, the themes of this entire book. God will be the judge between the nations. V'ochiach la'amim rabim. He will teach the nations. And what will he do when he teaches the nations and decides between their disputes? V'chitisu charvotam li'itim, v'chanitotehem lemazmerot, lo yisagoyel goy cherev lo yilmadu od milchama. When God becomes the judge, they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war. This is the message Yeshayahu says to the people and the people surrounding the city. One day you will come here not to destroy this city, but to learn from the city the special message that the city has to teach. And then, immediately, Isaiah turns to the Jewish people behind the walls and says as follows: one day the entire world will realize that the God of Jacob has something wonderful to teach. So you people have this message. Why will he preserve you? Because you are the ones that are supposed to carry this message to the world. You are the ones that have to practice it now. Do it now, not someday in the future. Because then God will know that it is your purpose and that you will be the ones to bring this message to the world and bring out about this beautiful vision. And immediately Isaiah says, Beit Yaakov lechu v'nelcha bi'or Adonai. Beit Yaakov, let us go now. Let us walk now in the light of God. Because that is why you will be preserved. That is why you will survive this, because that is your special purpose. As long as you, as the Jewish people, fulfill your special purpose, God will preserve you. God will rescue you from the armies of Assyria. In the next podcast, we will read the speech to the Jewish people as Isaiah describes what it is that are keeping them from walking in the light of God and how to fix them. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak, Isaiah 2a.